science wants to argue that belief in God is anti-scientific, but all of the fathers of science, Copernicus, Newton, Galileo, they all were faith-based researchers. So I find that super interesting.
Was there a debate on that at some point? Like, it wasn't always known that these men were spiritual.
Yeah, absolutely. Right? That has been taught wrong for a lot of years, historically speaking. Yeah, that's conflated often, that the early fathers of science were disproving God. That's not actually how they functioned. If you go read any of the works of the early, Principia Mathematica or Newton, Galileo, Copernicus, they're all highly spiritual. And they all believe that the reason that the universe is so ordered is because it's designed by God. And that's why they had faith that they could actually interpret the universe, was because they believed that it was designed by a creator to be intelligible, and that we had been given the capability to understand it. And so they led into that with faith, believing that it would be, logical, simple and logical for them to follow. And that's exactly what they found. Which is interesting, because now science wants to try and disprove God, but that's not actually where science actually came from. Yeah. The genesis of science was believing that intelligence was the designer of the universe.
Yeah.
And that's why I think it's so interesting. That's why I said this is a great, the Copernicus discovering that the Earth was not the center of the solar system is the same thing as like intelligence in scientific research. They don't allow for it now because they're so dogmatic, but it really damns their progression in a lot of ways. Same thing that happened to the scientific community for 1800 centuries. They couldn't make mathematical sense of anything that was going on because they had the Earth as the center. It was a geocentric model. And so none of the mathematical computations made sense, but it's because their premise was wrong. And I think that the argument for intelligent design does the same thing. You take like, who was it? Maxwell said this. He said, asking me to conduct science without God is like telling somebody to choose between Ford or manufacturing for the production of the car. Like, yeah, you have to have both.
Yeah.
Ford and, the ability to manufacture. Ford idea, manufacturing process, vehicle.
Yeah.
Well, science without God, I think, is very similar. It's saying understand the mysteries of the universe, but don't allow for intelligence. One of the things I find most interesting that I don't have in our notes here, but that we can get into for sure later on, is biology, human biology. That to me is as powerful an argument as the fine-tuning parameters of the universe. There is so much in biology that is fine-tuned that works as intelligence. Did you know that they recently discovered that there is a portion of the cell that is a translator, like a linguistics translator, that's taking all these portions of the cell and essentially translating it like Python coding or any coding language that has to have some translating aspect to it? That in and of itself is mind-blowing that they just discovered that. Another reason we thought that like genetic research was going to be the be-all end-all to like medicine, that you would have be able to do like personally catered medicine or vaccines through genetic alterations. But you know what they found? They found that genetics move like they're intelligent on their own volition, that once they document it, it'll change. like it's a living, breathing, thinking organism. Have you ever seen the experiment of, what is the experiment where they passed light through a slit, and when not observed, it would make wave patterns. And then when observed, it would convert back to a particle and not be a wave. Do you know that experiment, AD? What's the particle?
It's light.
Is it light?
Yeah, light is used.
What's the experiment called?
Double-slit experiment.
Double split.
Look that up real fast.
Yeah.
This will blow your freaking mind. This is one that they just wrote off because they can't explain it. It operates as if it were intelligent. This is what it is. So electrons.
1801, by the way.
Yeah.
More than 200 years ago.
Electrons from an electron beam. So what happens is this. When the electrons go through the double slit, they make a wave pattern. Okay? Because it's deferred light. And then it bounces off, it creates a wave, and then it hits in like a wave pattern. When they put an observable camera on it, those electrons convert from waves back to electrons. And you know how they do it? They go back in time. I'm like, this is just, it's a mind-blowing experiment. Anybody who watches this, if you've never looked up the double slit experiment, you have to look it up. Because essentially what it does, and you know what's interesting? So they put an observer on it, it changes. They unplug the observer, camera, it goes back to a waveform. It knows that the observer is on or off. Can't be fooled. They did another thing. So they had the observer before. When the observer was before the slit, it would go through and it would stay as an electron. It wouldn't turn into a wave. They then moved the observer to after the slit, where the electron went through and became a wave. As soon as they turn the observer on, it goes back in time and becomes an electron and comes back through. How does that function? We have no idea. They can't explain it. It's as if electrons are intelligent, as if light is intelligent. I mean, we haven't gotten much into gospel, but if you want to get into gospel, what does it say about light in Scripture? It says that light is knowledge. That experiment essentially proves that light is intelligent. It has the ability to know when it's being observed and convert itself back into a different structure.